Welcome back to another episode of the Student Athlete Sessions. Today we are joined by Brad Breier, current men's and women's golf coach at Lewis and Clark. Also a former D3 athlete, played baseball at Willamette University. Uh, Coach Breier, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, excited to talk about Division Three. I think I love what you're doing, and I think it's a great avenue for student athletes.
Absolutely. And you know it better than most. As I mentioned, former D3 athlete, got your master's in education from a D3 school, Chapman University out in California. Um, Started coaching a little bit, University of Redlands, and now as I mentioned earlier, at Lewis and Clark. So
Yeah,
really D3 guy through and through here.
yeah, no, pretty crazy. I was a teacher. I was planning on being a teacher forever. This coaching thing, really kind of came about out of nowhere. Coach Santua down at University of Redlands, good friend. Wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if he hadn't just been like, "Hey, do you want to come be my assistant coach?" Um, so pretty, very grateful to him. But yeah, I've had an interesting path. I didn't play the sport that I coach. And I've had a lot of experiences at Division Three that I try to learn from and try to make sure that I do the best for my kids that I can and give them a great experience over their 4 years here.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's all about, just outcomes. And um, everyone who played at the D3 level or coach knows that it's about way more than athletics. So I think that's the right mindset, and we're gonna get into it today. But I think just kind of start out with where we do with most guests here. Let's go through your recruiting process. How did you find Willamette? And when did you know you wanted to play college baseball? Like, what was that timeline like as a high schooler?
Um, like I think most kids, I really wanted to play Division One. My family, big UCLA people, multiple generations had gone there. Unfortunate for me, not a lot of 5'10" catchers are going to go Division One. Especially at the time when UCLA was like winning national championships with Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole on that pitching staff. So, I kind of had a realization about halfway through my junior year that there were some Division Ones that were kind of talking to me, but I needed to start looking at other avenues because I knew I wanted to play. Like I didn't want to just stop playing. And then I had a great, kind of senior season. My travel coach reached out to his friend who was the hitting coach at Willamette, and they had a prior relationship. And he's like, "Hey, I got this catcher that kind of is still looking for a home." So came up and saw the school. Never had been to the Pacific Northwest ever. Had no idea what I was expecting. I'm from LA. I'm an LA kid, and I came up and it happened to be one of those perfect days of weather. There's a river flowing through campus at Willamette. The stadium is pretty cool. And for me, that was when I kind of decided, like, hey, I'm interested in going to this school. So applied, went through all that. Honestly, didn't have a lot of communication with the head coach. I had more communication with the assistant coach, and decided that it would be a good fit for me. And then I got up here, and I had a great 4 years. I have tons of memories. My teammates are family. We still talk to this day. Um, but my recruiting process was, I didn't really know. I was the first one in my family to kind of ever think about playing college sports. So my parents, Lord knows, they gave me every opportunity and they did their best. But it's hard if you don't know the pathways and what you need to be doing. It's hard to get recruited. Like I didn't know that I needed to be sending emails. I didn't know that I needed to be, playing in certain tournaments or going to different scouting events or anything like that. Nobody really told me what was going on. I just kind of played and let things happen. And I ended up playing for all 4 years, and I had a great experience. But it was a very, I guess, small recruiting window for me, or recruiting process for me. It wasn't like 3 years of sending emails and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
It was more like 6 months where I was like, okay, I want to keep playing, um, and I'm happy I did. Wouldn't trade those 4 years for anything. Like I said, I have memories forever. Every time I see my guys, we sit and just talk for hours. it's never usually about the baseball either. It's about like all the stuff that we did, in class, and the projects and the senior thesis and all that stuff, and kind of where we're at now. But it was an awesome 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, typically that's what remains, after you, no one really will remember their career batting average or like, win loss record if they're a pitcher or anything like that. It's more, you know, the moments on the bus rides, um,
Oh yeah, like
on a Wednesday night or
I caught every game. So like I'm icing my knees on a bus ride home from Tacoma. I'm sitting in the back and my legs are killing me. And I'm just like, my teammates gave me the back row so I could stretch out a little bit because I,
right,
just caught 3 games in 2 days. It was, the memories of, the going and camping, in the off season, or, or just the weather that sometimes we played in. I mean, I guarantee there's not a player that didn't play during my time at Willamette that won't talk about sponging the field, where we had these giant foam sponges and we had to take them out and get the puddles of water off the field, and it stunk in the moment. Or pulling the tarp at like 5 a.m. before class, like to get the water off so the field can dry so we can play later. Um, just all those little things that you end up having to do. Those are the memories that end up sticking with you. And in the moment, yeah, like my hands were frozen and my feet were cold. But now we look back at it and we laugh about it because one of our friends got stuck under the tarp for when we
right.
pulled it, or
Yeah.
something ridiculous like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Another funny addition to the, people like to glamorize college athletics, but at the D3 level, you are the grounds crew if you're a baseball player.
yeah, like
Um,
I mean, the amount of times I tamped the clay down into that home plate, just to have some batter in the next game come and dig it out in 30 seconds, and I would just stare at him, just being like, "Dude, you have no idea how long that took me to do."
yeah.
um,
Thanks for ripping it up.
just ripped it up in the first inning of the series, and like you have to go fix it again after the series when all you want to do is go home and throw Netflix on and grab some Taco Bell on the way home. So it's just
That's right.
it's an absolute blast though. I always tell my players, I talk a lot about what if, and making sure that they don't have any regrets at the end of their career, because the second it's gone, you miss it. You miss it instantly.
Hmm.
One of my senior captain last year is coming back to assistant coach this year, and he's dying because he's like, I miss being at practice already. Like I want to be with the team, and it's like that way forever. So I'm very fortunate that I get to do that now as a profession. That I get to be around that team environment. That's really where it started with Coach Santua at Redlands. Was I just miss being around the team. That's what I told him. That's how the initial conversation was. I was just like, hey man, like I miss being around the team environment, because golf's such an individual sport, that like I really missed being and creating those memories and stuff. And I love those Redlands teams. We had an absolute blast this last year, here, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I mean, for those who are listening and maybe wondering, like, why you switched, like, why not go be the assistant baseball coach at Redlands? Like, why golf for you?
Um, I obviously, like, I was a catcher, took a pretty good beating in college. Body was definitely a little worn out. I went to teaching school and I was substitute teaching, and Fridays I would always just give myself the day off. So I'd always have a 3-day weekend. So it was a little nice of like I'd sub Monday through Thursday. I had class Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday was basically homework or hanging back at home. Because there is a lot of things as being a student athlete, like you have to sacrifice. I wasn't home much during the summers. I was out playing summer league somewhere during college. So like I finally got to go back and hang out and be with my friends, go hang out on the beach, kind of some of the things that I missed during college. Um, and I was just sitting on the couch one day, and my buddy hit me up and was like, "Hey man, you want to go play 9 holes at Twilight?" And I was just like, "This is dumb. The ball's not even moving. Golf isn't hard. Like this is like it's a joke, right?" Um, and I went out, and like I'm playing with 3 buddies that didn't even play high school sports, and I'm just getting killed. Like I'm this college athlete. My ego took a little bit of a beating that day because I'm sitting there and I'm just going like, how is my 5'5" like little tiny friend hitting it exactly where he wants every single time, and I can't hit a fairway to save my life. But after hitting hooks, shanks, tops, whatever you want to think about, like I hit it that day. I hit one in the center of the face and was just hooked. It was like hitting a line drive again. That feeling of just kind of like you almost didn't even make contact with it. And I think any golfer or baseball player knows what that feels like. It's like you almost just didn't even hit the ball. And I remember I went and got golf clubs the next day, and I spent the next year on the driving range. I was either stubbing, playing golf on a driving range, or going to class. That was it for the next like year while I was doing school. And I just got really addicted to it. So it replaced baseball for me. My competitive baseball days were over, and it kind of filled a void for me a little bit. And golf truly is like, how bad do you want it? Because like I wasn't on the team anymore. So like I'm like, okay, I just don't want to shoot 100. So then I got to the 80s pretty quick, because if you can keep it on the planet, you can take some strokes off your game pretty quick. And then it's, how do I get to the 70s? Okay, I got to the 70s. How do I get to scratch? Once I got the scratch, how do I get to the 60s and start beating some of these people that played college golf? And that was kind of what led to the Redlands connection. Was I would go chip and putt, because I could hit it a mile, but I had no idea how to putt it 10 feet. So I would just go down to the short game area when I moved out to Redlands and practice. And the team would be down there practicing on their short game, and I just kind of got to know them, and I got to know Coach Santua, and we became friends, and that's how this whole stemmed. It's been a wild ride. If you'd asked me, 5 years ago, what would you be doing in 5 years? I'd be like, I'd probably be teaching my special ed class, or thinking about maybe moving into administration at some point. I was never planning on leaving the classroom. I remember when I got a text from the Lewis and Clark baseball coach was my old catching coach, and he texted me. And he's like, "Hey, have you, they're about to have an opening at the golf program." And I'm like, they're not going to hire an ex baseball guy. Like, I was really interested. I really wanted it, like right off the bat. And Cod knows this. He just was like, "Oh my God, slow down a little bit," because like I went 100 miles an hour like instantly with all the ideas and all this stuff. And he's like, "Well, you still gotta go through. You gotta go through the interview process." He's like, and it's great when your mentor is down the hall. He was my mentor in college, and now like I go into his office all the time and bug him. But it was crazy. I remember getting the call from Mark Pietrock, our athletic director, and I went screaming down the street because I was so excited to have the job. And it's been a great fit. I love living in Portland, and I have a really good administration that really supports us and wants us to be successful. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
That is a journey. And
Yeah.
it's something I want to just call out for kids listening to this, or, you know, um, there is some element after your career is over as an athlete that for a lot of people physically playing that sport anymore. I mean, baseball is also a hard one to get, 22 people together to play pickup, but physically, I was the same way with my knees at the end of my basketball career. It's like every practice at the end of my senior year, my body would just be like, what are we doing? Like,
Like, yeah.
why are we putting these shoes on and going again? Because I was just so beat up. And yeah, I think there's some element of reinvention and trying to figure out, like, okay, who are you? Who am I as an athlete now that this sport that I've played for so long and that's brought me so much is no longer a thing. Um, so I just want to, commend you on that kind of that reinvention and figuring out your new athletic passion. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a competitor, you're going to find something, right? Like, I'm a competitive person. I want to win. It was one of the reasons why I was interested in this gig. Is I was just like, I want to take a program that's struggling a little bit right now, and I want to win. I don't want to just go to tournaments and be coming forth. I want to go to tournaments with the people thinking like, hey, Lewis and Clark's here, like they're here to win the tournament. That's my goal, and that's what my kids work for, and that's why we do we run the program the way we do. It's to have a great experience, but part of having a great experience is winning. It's
yeah.
nice to win. Winning is that validation at the end of the day that you're doing the right things the right way.
hmm Yeah, and anyone who looks at the Lewis and Clark men's and women's golf team right now would say, "Oh, successful program, you guys are winning tournaments. As we talked about a little bit before we started recording, 11 men, 8 women on the current rosters coming in, but it was not that way when you took over. What was the status of the program when you got that head coaching role?
Um, so I didn't have full teams on either side, so we couldn't compete as a team. So you need a minimum of 4, and I didn't have that on either side. So my guys had to play as indies, and I didn't have any ladies. Coming in, we had a few people make some spot tournament starts for us, but like it was really one of those things of like, it was, the first year was rough, man. Like if you're a competitor, like, and you're just automatically at the bottom of the leaderboard because you physically don't have enough bodies, that's tough. I commend the guys that were here. And they were, and I basically start every meeting with this because I still have 2 on our roster. They've done everything I've asked of them. Like they've tried every goofy experiment that I've possibly thought of, to do practice, to do, to how we do things, and it's very similar to teaching. It's like your first 2 years, you're really just trying to hold your head above water. Like, what am I doing? Am I doing things the right way? What worked last year? What didn't? And then by the time I'm going into my 3rd season now here, and it's like, it just feels like the off season's a little bit easier. Feels like you kind of know how you're going to run things. You kind of have an idea of what your tournament schedule is going to be. I mean, I had no idea how to even set up a tournament schedule. I had no idea how that. I was like, is there a database? Like, do I just go click like, hey, can we go to that one? Or I didn't know how any of this was done. It was, thankfully I have very patient bosses who didn't, Sharon Sexton and Mark, that didn't mind to be just absolutely bugging them with questions all the time. Sharon calls me a golden retriever because I go in 18 directions at the same time sometimes, and she has to sometimes like be like, hey, let's get this done first. And I'm an idea person, for better or for worse. I have ideas and I see if they work, and if they don't, I don't do them again. But yeah, program was in a rough spot. I think there's a lot of excitement about this upcoming season. I think we know that we have talent. I think the alumni are really excited. I mean, last year we basically broke every statistical record for a long time on the men's side. We hold a lot of the top 3 scoring records, and I think we're going to continue to rewrite the record book going forward.
Yeah. And I'm sure, golfers are getting better. The quality of golfer you can recruit is getting better.
Oh,
But just before we get into, stroke scoring records, I just want to circle back to the guys and women that have helped you build this culture. Like for recruits listening to this, like what are some of the characteristics from those players that you have really valued as a coach? Like, what are some of the things that your players have done that you look back on and you're like, that was something that helped cement this culture we're trying to build at Lewis and Clark?
um, I'm very grateful to this group because it's really easy to step into a winning program, right? It's easy to want to go to a successful program. It's a lot harder to go to a program where the coach is preaching a vision and then you have to imagine it in your head because it's physically not there. So I'm grateful. I mean, I brought in 6 guys and 6 ladies last year, which is a huge recruiting class for golf. But we needed it. We needed to have a full women's team. We needed to have a full men's team. The big thing that I look for is, I'm a big, I want personality. I want somebody that's going to be a team person. I want somebody that's going to help people with their games. I want a competitive person. I think a lot of the time people think Division III, oh, it's academic and all that stuff. No, we're fiery competitors. Like you put us out there, we're there to win. And I think, some of the other things is just, are you coachable? Are you willing to make changes that will make you worse in the short run, but will make you better in the long run? Are you willing to miss a lineup? I think it's under 10% of incoming freshmen play. So like it's realistic that you may not play as a freshman. And you have to have the mental adversity to be able to handle that. You have to be able to deal with the fact that you might have been the number 1 on your high school, for 4 years, and then you come here and you're like seventh on the depth chart, and that's tough. That can be tough. But I think the big thing is that coachability is like, okay, so you're missing lineups. What are we going to do to fix that? What are we going to change? What is holding you out of those lineups? What is the factor that's keeping you out? And are you willing to be disciplined enough? Because golf practice, let's be real, we all want to go just hit drivers all the time. Like we want to go hit drivers all the time. It's fun. I like to do it too. Like nobody wants to go hit, a whole bunch of 60-degree wedges on the range and like do all that stuff. But, are you disciplined enough to practice the right way? And I think when we implemented Decade Golf, which is a stat-based system in the spring, I think that really helped this group. And that's really what they did, is they're very disciplined to how they're practicing. And I think that's why from fall to spring, we played a lot better, even despite being a very, very young group. I think it just, that system really helped us. I think it, and credit to the team, I didn't really have to push them to use it. They wanted it. They wanted
What is
to use it.
What is
So
the system?
it's Decade Golf. It's an analytics system. So basically, they go in, they enter all their stats from their rounds, and it tells them where did you gain shots, where did you lose shots. So it's off the tee, approach, chipping, putting, and it basically breaks it down into what are you doing well and what are you doing bad. So they don't have to guess, right? They don't have to be like, oh, I just really didn't putt well today. Well, actually, Decade says that you didn't hit your approaches very close, and that's from 35 feet, you're not going to two putt every single time. Right. So it's actually not your putting, it's your approach.
The wedges, yeah.
So it's like it really drives the practice. So they're a very disciplined group, but man, they're a lot of fun. I never have to drag them to practice. I never have to worry if they're getting work in. I have to sometimes tell them to chill out. I have to sometimes tell them, I don't need you going and hitting balls at 10 o'clock at night, in our on-campus facility. Like sometimes I need them to take a break. So, to the recruits out there, it's, I would break it down like that. Are you coachable? Are you disciplined? Are you mentally tough enough to maybe deal with some adversity early in your career? And I think that's something that, I don't promise playing time. I promise the opportunity to earn it. You will always be able to qualify here. But I'm not going to promise you playing time. You could sit for a while but the thing is, we don't do coaches picks here. So if you're not making lineups, it's because you're not shooting the scores. And then I'm one of those coaches that's going to look at you and be like, okay, so what is it? What do we need to go work on? Let's go do it. Right. We get some really talented players at Division III, some super talented players that for whatever reason didn't get any Division I looks, right? And my job is to develop their games and to teach. And that's kind of how I see it. And you have to have the right kid. Some people don't want their swing to change.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to emulate the professional golfers and try to get your numbers on the launch monitors to the same, if those are the best in the world and that's how they're doing it, why wouldn't you? So that's a big thing for recruits. It's just, and that's something that they need to look for in recruiting as well, is, am I going to get developed as a player? I was a baseball guy. I taught myself golf, had a few lessons, but it became an addiction for me. It became something that I strive to get better, every single time I go practice. And, by working on my own game, it taught me how to work on others.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you think it gives you a different viewpoint, like, maybe a coaching advantage, like having taught yourself golf and coming to it later in life, that you're not as stuck in your ways on how things should work, and maybe more open to the analytics approach? And how do you view that? And also, how do recruits do you have to convince any kids to be like, who are like, why would I listen to a baseball player teaching me about golf?
Sure I'm sure there's somebody that's asked themselves that. I'm sure I've lost a recruit because they're like, oh, he played baseball. That's fine, right? I think anybody that kind of comes on our visits and sees how we do things and can pick up pretty quick that, like, I'm knowledgeable about what needs to be worked on and what it needs to be. I think, for me, I'm always looking for a way to get better. Like last year, we finished in 5th in conference, right? Using the team as an example. What are we going to change in order to not finish in 5th this year and move up? You don't do the same things over and over thinking that you're just going to get a different result. That's the definition of insanity. And it's something that I swear I've heard in every sport across across all decades, is doing the same thing over, expecting a different result. I'm sure you've heard it as well. Um, but for me is, are you going to make the changes that you need to make, and the stuff like that. And I think that in my own personal game, I like I said when we were talking earlier, like ex-baseball guy usually equates to a decent amount of speed. Hitting driver, I can hit it a long way, but I couldn't chip it 10 feet. So it was like, I had to go teach myself, and I had to go find, what are proper mechanics, what are proper that. So I think for me, because I've had to develop my game from scratch, kind of on my own, I have a whole bunch of different ways of describing it, and teaching it. And that's honestly, I think teaching has kind of helped me with coaching, is because like I used to teach special ed, and you sometimes had to describe what 4 times 4 was in 6 different ways to 6 different kids to make it
Mhm.
click in their brains. It's the same thing with coaching golf. I encourage them to work with our assistants, to work with each other, because maybe we're saying the same thing, and maybe the way that I'm saying it clicks, or maybe it's the way somebody else clicks.
Right.
It's just it's not an ego thing for me. It's about making them better. But yeah, I mean, I know how I like to play. I know how I've developed certain shots around the greens. Um, I think for me, the big thing is knowing that I didn't have the background in golf. I enjoyed the golf because it really is all on you. Like I love the mental side of the game. The mental side of the game is awesome. Sticking to your process, being okay with the fact that you're going to hit a good shot and just it's going to bounce off the green and you're going to have the worst chip in the world. Like, you can't focus on that. You got to focus on, okay, I did everything I was supposed to and something bad happened. I mean, and okay, I'm going to go figure it out. We always talk about, I should never be able to tell when they're on the course whether they're shooting 65 or shooting 78, right?
Right.
Like
Body
it's just
language
like,
should be.
yeah, I mean, enjoy the day. We play, we go down to Southern California to start our year, and we're going to be playing half a mile from the beach on a 70-degree day. Like, you can't enjoy that, like, while you're playing golf. Like, I mean, why, what are we doing? Like, you
Yeah.
should enjoy every second. And that goes back to, that what ifs we were talking about earlier. It's just, enjoying the moment, because it goes quick. It goes quick
Yep.
and then it's gone. And then you miss it the second it's gone. Like the second
Yep.
you're walking across the stage at graduation and then you realize you don't have practice next week, brutal. It's and then you're just and then you have to find something to fill the void. Um, which for me, my hobby ended up turning into my profession.
Yeah. That
So
worked out well.
yeah, yeah, it does. It's funny. I don't play as much golf as I used to, but because I'm always working on their games. But occasionally someone will chirp at me a little bit, and I'll go grab the sticks out of the car.
Yeah. You
So
got to. You got to.
yeah,
Yeah.
got sometimes they need to know, they need to be reminded. So,
Yeah.
but it's all fun. It's all good fun and games.
Love that. All right. Well, let's get into the mechanics of golf recruiting. I know you gave us an overview of your baseball process, which, probably different than a lot of the kids going through baseball at the moment, which I feel so professionalized, especially in that sport. But
It's
from a golf perspective, you talked about having to learn how to get, the team into tournaments. What was that ramp up period for your recruiting, um, for the golf
yeah.
teams to get the teams up, to full strength?
I think the first step was, what is my philosophy going to be? What am I looking for in the golfers? Am I looking for just purely scores? Am I looking for, fundamental swings? Am I looking for speed? What was it? So, I really sat down. I mean, the first few months here at LC, I mean, I ate every night in my office. Like you just pull long hours. That's why like season 3, I'm like, oh, cool, I can work from home today, or I can, I have a little more time. I might even go play golf myself. Like things are starting to relax a little bit, just because things become easier and I kind of know how I'm recruiting. But for me, it changed between the men and the women. It was different for me. So when I sat down, because we had the number 1 women's team in the country, my last year at Redlands, we had 4 All-Americans on the roster on the women's side. And then you have to kind of think of, where are you playing? I'm sitting up here and, I'm in SoCal. I'm like 1,500 feet up. It's 95 degrees. The ball goes pretty far without really trying. Then I got up here ball goes nowhere. And I think anybody on my team will probably agree. I got a couple Colorado kids on my team that are not fans when they they come from home, then they're hitting 380-yard drives and they come here and it's like 290. But yeah, so I developed the philosophy first. On the men's side, I went with size and speed and pretty fundamentally sound golf swings. I looked less at scores and I kind of looked more at where are they going to be within like 18 months. Obviously, you want the players that can shoot in the 60s, and I think I have quite a few that can. My goal is to always have top to bottom a team that I could roll out at any tournament and we can win. We're there to win, right? 1 through 10. On the women's side, I really looked more. Oh, sorry, going back to the men's. The last thing on the men's, I forgot to say it. I looked for, can we put size on them? Can we put some size? Can we add some speed? Because here in the spring, ball just, maybe you get one bounce, right? Like, I mean, we have water here. Coming from LA, wasn't used to rain, but the ball doesn't go anywhere. So it's all about, maybe you hit it 320 in the fall, and then in the spring it's like 290, and you have to be able to still hit it 290 because you can still come in with a wedge rather than coming in with a longer club. The par fives are still reachable at a certain distance. So I really looked at like, okay, maybe the kid is swinging like 108 driver speed. Well, can we get him to like 115 pretty quick? With ripstick training and weight room, because that's something that a lot of high school golfers don't do. Is they do. I mean, sports have become so specialized that you don't play multiple sports. So like a lot of my golfers have only played golf. Well, they've never, if you've never played another sport, golf isn't necessarily associated with the weight room.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm a big proponent of the weight room. I think for a few of my guys this summer was big for them because they put on some speed, they put on some size. I'm very excited to see them back because, hitting the ball farther is never a bad thing.
It definitely helps, not hurts.
It helps when you can still go for par fives, out of the rough or something like that. So that's kind of what I look for in the men's. And on the women's side, I looked less for the fundamental swing. I looked more for athletic. Speed is a big thing on the women's side. If you can hit it 220 on the women's side, we play from 5,600 yards. If you do the math, it basically means you're coming in with a wedge every hole. If you can get it out there 230, 220 to 230, it's driver wedge on a lot of holes. It's driver, 3-wood hybrid on par fives. I had the fortunate opportunity to go with Coach Santu and the Redlands teams to the national championships at Howie in the Hills in Florida. It's Howie in the hills. Like, you got to be able to hit it high. You got to be able to get the spin, and you got to be able to hold the greens. And on the women's side, that really comes from just being able to swing harder. So that's what I really looked for. And, on both sides, I looked for work ethic, personality. Are they going to fit in the locker room? Because as much as I love my teammates, I think a lot of them will agree we get along a lot better now than we did when we were actually together in college. I think I really preach the team culture. We do a lot of team bonding here the first couple of weeks. And then like, you should know your teammates. Where are they from? What do they like to eat? What you should hang out with them. You should want to be around them. Yes, sometimes they're like siblings and you need a break from them. And we've all been there, but at the end of the day, my number one rule is like, you care about your teammates. Like, you care about them as people, you make sure they're okay, you take care of them, and, we root for each other. And I think I have a really good group that does that. I mean, I had a kid last year that was, in the lineup a lot, and he missed the lineup. And the first thing he did was go celebrate the teammate that beat him. For me, that means I've recruited the right person. I've recruited the right people because they generally care about each other. And we're just going to continue to grow that culture. And that's kind of what I really started looking for with the recruiting. And then, because Lewis and Clark is an expensive school, like, you have to find a lot of those kids. Like, you got to, like, I recruited, I mean, I knew I needed to get at least 5 on the women's side, right, to count for a team and have a drop score. I knew I needed to bring in a sizable class on the men's side to, to set the foundation for the future. Was able to get somebody out of the portal. Was able to bring in 5 newcomers. It was a really good year, and we had an awesome year. And now it's, we kind of worked through some of the kinks, some of the things that worked, some of the things that didn't. Thankfully, I don't have to send 200 emails every year. I know any football coach out there is going to be like 200. I do that in a week, because they have to get so many kids all the time. Um, but for me, it was just go 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 from the beginning. So developed that philosophy. Then I got on the recruiting websites. Had to figure out where I was going to recruit from. Like, what's the farthest place I can recruit from? How far can I get a kid to travel to come to Oregon? I was able to get a kid from India. I was able to get a kid from New York. I was able to get kids from Colorado and Texas this upcoming class. So I've kind of realized that we have some momentum building here, and kids get here. Our campus is top 10, nationally in terms of how pretty it is. Our golf courses that we practice at are amazing. Two of them have hosted the Oregon Am the last 2 years. So if you start to piece those things together, kids
Build the
come out
case. Yep.
and kids come out, and then you hope that you're not a horrible person to play for and people want to come play for you. And at the like I said earlier before we started filming, like, we run this a little bit more like a Division I program, like in terms of the stats and all that stuff and how we practice and the weight room and kind of what I ask from them in terms of their time. So you have to want that. I honestly, I kind of try to not scare really recruits on their visits, but like be very transparent about, this is what my expectations are in
Yeah.
terms of your work ethic, because this is where we want to be, and you're not going to get there if you're doing the bare minimum. So it kind of helps when you're bringing in kids that are bought into that right off the bat.
For
And
sure.
then
Better to
and
be
then
honest on the visit than have them be surprised when
oh,
they enroll in the fall.
you hear the horror stories, right? Like, if just, people being told one thing and then they get there and it's different. It's like, I think we didn't lose a single person this last year. Every single person returned. And I think that is because what I told them it was going to be is what it was. And I think that really helps in terms of, keeping people happy and making sure that you have a solid program.
Yeah. How about for kids out there who, maybe want to play at Lewis and Clark or just want to play college golf? You talked about recruiting sites. You talked about trying to evaluate on the men's side for strength and speed, on the women's side also for distance. Um, how are you looking at that? Like, are kids, can they post videos on Instagram and you kind of review them there? Are there more golf specific sites that kids should be using?
Yeah, so there's NSR, there's NCSA, there's field level. There's a lot of different avenues. Those are the main three that I use. There's word of mouth, as well. I know a lot of the swing coaches here in Oregon. They'll sometimes reach out. Can't find the kid on any recruiting site, but then the coach is like, "Hey, great swing." Um, my recommendation to kids is go get on some sort of platform, somewhere where I can see a swing, and see tournament scores. But the big thing that I always tell people is watch the yardages that you're playing. If you're playing 6,000 yards in a men's tournament, it's hard for me to evaluate where you're at as a player, because you could have a fundamentally sound swing, but 6,000 yards is like
It's pretty
almost
short.
driving. It's pretty short. Like, we play 66 to 68, sometimes 7, and we play in all sorts of conditions where 68 sometimes plays like 74. Like, if you're playing from 6,000, it's hard for me to look at that and go like, they can play at the next level. I need people to be above 6,600 yards on the men's side. On the women's side, 55 to 6,000, like, that's fine. But like, a lot of high schools play under 5, and it's just like, I don't. They're driving greens, so it's like, of course they should be like 5 or 6 under. Like, what are you going to do if you back them up 700 yards and they have to all of a sudden come in with mid irons instead of chipping for their second? So it's like, what I would tell recruits is go get on a platform to where we can see swings. Go get a social media account that's just for your sport, just for golf, right?
Create a new one.
Create a new one. So you have your personal, that's great. That's the stuff for all your friends and family and all that fun stuff. Go create a golf account for recruiting. Because if I can't find you, but I see your name on a scoreboard and I can't find you on a website or anything like that, I'll go check social media. Like, if I see somebody that lights it up in a round, I'm going to be like, I'm going to go, let's go check out the swing. Post swings, post swing changes, post what you're working on. I like the fact I have a kid coming in this year from Texas that 2 years ago, and we've joked about this. I probably wouldn't have recruited him with the swing that he had 2 years ago, but you could see the progression over his social media account to where I could see that he was clearly working with someone and putting in the time. And for me, it's like never seen the kid play in person, but I could tell right then and there he has the work ethic and wants to be great, because you don't just go from where he was to where he is now without putting in a serious amount of time. And coaches recognize that. Like we can tell. If you come out for a visit and and you're getting told this is something that might need to change or something like that in your swing, you know are you going to go work on it, or are you going to do the same thing? So I would
Right.
suggest that. I would suggest, go get on a platform, go get a social media page, and then email coaches. I get so many emails, and it's great. And to all the recruits out there, I wish I could say yes to everybody. Like, you really do. Like, the worst feeling in the world as a coach is saying no to someone. We don't want to say no. It's just, I always want around 10 on my roster. There's a lot of kids that play golf, but recruits need to look at the schools. When you're emailing coaches, recruits, make sure that when you say I'm really interested in a so and so program, that the school has that program. Like,
An academic, like a major.
go do the research
Yeah.
before you send it. I get it. The canned emails, you're sending a lot. You're not going to type out a whole personal thing to every single coach. I get it. It doesn't hurt my feelings if I get a canned email. What is a little concerning is when I get told, like, hey, I'm really interested in this program, and I go, we don't have that program. So, like, to me, right off the bat, that's signaling you didn't go research the school. And that's fine. Mistakes happen, right? Like, I had two kids that had the same name, and I said, how's, New York right now? And the kid goes, oh, I'm from California. And I'm like, oh, mistakes happen, right? Like, it's
Sure.
going to happen.
Everyone's
It's
human.
not like I cross a kid off the list because they do something like that, but just, it's that little extra effort. It's that little extra effort of, like, go look first.
What
But
does that look like? Like, what was an email that caught your attention out of the flood of emails you get that was like, oh, that was good?
like, good is like a like a good email sent to
That,
me.
that made you maybe start looking at their swing, or maybe like started you recruiting them.
Um, I like it short and sweet. Like, I love when you tell me what your academic interests are, because Lewis and Clark's a high academic school. We have our bread and butter, and it's the sciences. Okay, like, if the sciences or law or teaching is what you want to do, we're the number one law school in Oregon, number one teaching school in Oregon. Like, that's our bread and butter, and we have OHSU that loves our kids, that take our science classes. Like, it's what we're good at, right? So I love it when they put academic interests. Um, I love seeing swing progressions. Like, I love seeing, like, this is where I was and this is where I am now. Again, showing me that you've clearly put in the time. So I like swing videos attached. Make sure the links work. There's a lot of times I get links that I click on and they're like, video not available, and I'm like, well, darn. And then I'll go check social media, right?
Right.
But, like, those are good emails. Sending me academic interests, telling me what they're shooting in tournaments. Again, yardages. Don't just tell me you shot 72 at your home course. Tell me I shot 72 at this tournament from this yardage. Give me specifics so then I can actually go, like, because I don't know what the tournament is. I don't know if it's a big tournament. I don't know if it's the Masters. I don't know if it's, something like that. But if I see yardage and I see score, that gives me a pretty good idea of, can this person play?
Hmm.
You know, so those are the good emails, and they're not crazy long. But, like, if you send me an email that doesn't have a video link and I'm having a busy day, I may not get to it for a little bit, because that
Right.
means I have to then go put in time to go, like, find your swing somewhere. So attach a swing, attach me scores and yardages, attach me your academic interests and contact information. You do those four things, I try to get back to everybody. But, like, as a former student athlete, you get into the season, it feels like you're in light speed all the time. Like, it's
Yep.
just, and there's some days that I can't get the emails until, the middle of the afternoon, and it's just, it's tough, and I'm sure that goes for a lot of coaches. We get a lot of emails. It's just
Yep.
and it's good. I encourage recruits to do it. I love getting emails. I love communication. If I don't get back to you, send me another one. Maybe I just, it slipped my mind because we just had a tournament one weekend and have another tournament and I just haven't gotten to it and I started it and I didn't get back to you. Send me if I don't get back to you in a few days, send me another one. Okay. So, it again, showing that little effort of willing to do that.
For sure. Yeah. Um, what about like and social media follow-ups too, like following the Lewis and Clark golf account?
Yeah, I mean, I love social media. Like, yeah, it's funny. I'm not a big social media person personally. But since running the program, like we've gotten to a certain, I mean, we're over 1,500 followers now for a golf page, which is pretty solid. And for me, it's like I like doing the videos. So, I mean, we do a lot of stuff of day in the life and stuff like that. We're doing
Yeah, you
player
guys do have
profiles
good
right now.
content.
Yeah, and my players know if they want to do a whole like one of my guys, Mason, loves doing hole of the days. I'm sure he would love me to shout out his TikTok right now. I don't even know what it is. Um, but that being said, like they know that they can go make a video and send it to me, and I'll review it, make sure that it check certain boxes, and then I'll post it. So like it's very much a player run social media, and then I just kind of am like the one that makes sure that there's certain things that are not in videos, which I think we all know what those are. Um, so,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of fun. But yeah, the social media follow, go follow. Like I just had somebody follow this morning. I had no idea who they were. I liked the swing. I went to their email that was on the Instagram page and I sent them an email. That all happened this morning. But like
Right.
the more you give me, the easier it is. You got to make it easy for us. I know that it's a little selfish because we're the ones that are doing this as a career, but like you got to understand the amount of things that we do. And at the D3 level, I run social media, I do the travel, I do the tournament schedule, I do the budget, I'm wearing a lot of different hats. And like we talked about earlier, I make the gear. So it's like, it's one of those things of like, I wear a lot of hats. So you got to help me out a little bit and just give me
Yep.
some info.
Right. And it's not personal. It's not like you said, it's not selfish. It's just the reality of college sports. Like there are a lot of people that are shooting for the 10 slots to play golf at a specific school. And coaches are human and they also have a lot of responsibilities. Some are, parents, some have kids. And, in addition to trying to get their team to do what they're asking, they gotta, have family responsibilities. So it's a ton to juggle.
And I'm very fortunate. I'm a full time coach. We have coaches in our conference that are part time. They
Part
have to go
time.
work
Yep.
whole other jobs, and then they have to go do this, and they have a family. I don't know how they do it. I know who they are in our conference. I respect the heck out of them because I'm just like I'm tired at the end of the day, and like they just got off work and have to go do pretty much what I just did all day, and it's like that is brutal. So it's yeah, I mean, it's very helpful. Just understand that, and I can't speak for every program, but for me, I'm only looking to bring two in on both teams every year. That's kind of my ideal class size is
Yeah.
two men,
Yeah.
two women every year from now on. Now that I have it going and we're built, two and two. And so then it's like that's not I'm done quick in recruiting. So I work about 2 years in advance. It's like, I'm already looking at 2027s and and all of that. So, if you're a junior in high school and you have an email to coach, you
Get
have
on it.
another 2 months of summer, go start emailing coaches, but do your research first. Like I said, do your
Yeah.
research, make sure it's a place you want to go. Make sure it's a place that you have your questions ready. Don't get on the recruiting calls and just not have any questions. Make sure that you've shown that you've put in the effort.
Yep. All right. I do because I saw on your Instagram, yeah, you got golf recruiting tips for the class of 2026, 2027. So any recruits who do want to play and are curious, go check that out on their Instagram page. It's really well laid out, exactly what they're looking for. Um, but with the time we have left, I want to switch over to a topic that we get asked about all the time, which is D3 financial aid
Mm.
and admissions. So if you have a recruit, one of those two recruits on either the men's or the women's side coming in, how does Lewis and Clark, you know, allow you to like what influence do you have in the admissions or financial aid process? Do you guys do pre-reads, any type of stuff like that?
Yeah. It's tough. We're the only division in college that can't give athletic money, and that's really tough because we trust me, we want to. We if we had the option, we would, But like, I don't have any influence. Our admissions department and financial aid department works separately from us, and that's NCAA rules. At Division III, like I'm not allowed to go in there and ask for more money for you. There's an appeal process and everything like that, and that's the thing is admissions and financial aid, and this probably goes for every school. I know it is for us. They're nice people. Like they want, if this is where you want to be, they want to find a way to help you get there. They're not trying to be a pain, but they also have to look at it from, they need to hit their class numbers and all that stuff. And, it's, for me, and this is how I do it. I don't put a timeline on commitments. So I send my offers out. These are the people that we're recruiting. And then what I kind of say is that the number one question I get is, well, when do I have to decide? There is no time limit, but I always tell them I'm only looking for two, and it's the first two that call me, because the way I recruit is any combination of two, I'm happy, right? Like I think they're all great players. They're all going to help us. And then I recruit, and I'm happy if I get one or two, like any combination. That being said, know the admissions deadlines. Again, it's becoming harder and harder to get a college spot. It's not fair to ask families to make decisions before they see the financial aid.
Of course. Yep.
It's not fair. It happens. I've had somebody this year commit before they saw the financial aid, which is great. It's music to my ears because it gets me done a little bit earlier and almost gives me a little bit of a break in recruiting. But we do early reads, but just to give you an idea, I set my recruiting filters on these websites at like 3.9
GPA.
Like GPA. And for multiple reasons. One, Lewis and Clark's a very hard academic school. Like the amount of time you spend outside of class studying. We do study hall on planes. We do study hall on the road. Like they owe me 6 hours a week. Like it's a full up, like and you're not going to get cut slack because you're an athlete. Like it's not going to happen. So, for a few reasons, they need to be able to handle the academics and the athletics at Lewis and Clark. So, for me, that GPA signals that they've been able to handle the time management in high school, and, they'll be able to do that here. And, that's kind of what we're looking for there. It also really helps in terms of merit aid to have a high GPA and a tough class schedule. Like you need to take APs. If you're thinking the D3 route, like you need to take honors, AP, whatever it's called in your area, you need to take them because they look at strength of your academic schedule. Did you just coast and just take all the normal, gen ed classes, or did you challenge yourself? They want to see someone that challenged themselves and got a high GPA. And that's tough, right? Because, you're doing that as well as trying to be good enough to be on the team, which also requires a lot of time. So, it's tough. We do early reads. I'll send them in. Our dean of admissions sends me back feedback. I kind of at this point know going into my third recruiting class, like, hey, these parameters are going to be good. But number one thing, I can't tell you what you're going to pay. Nobody has that power at Division III. I can't tell you like, this is what it's going to be. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you, and then you get a bill in the mail that's like way more.
Way different. Yeah.
I always say like, I think because of your GPA, it will make it very manageable. And like I said, the people at Lewis and Clark, wonderful people. They are trying to, if this is where you want to be, they do a great job of working with you. It just means you may have to be a little more patient. You may not be able to do your commitment as early as you want because maybe you need a little bit more and you need to go through the appeal process through the school and explain to them why you need that and all that stuff. So my recommendation is to start early, do early decision or early action. Make sure you know the difference because you don't want to, you only get one early decision. But for general timeline, I try to get my 2026s on campus anywhere from January to the start of the school year. I always tell them to do early action or early decision on November 1st. And I'm usually done by Christmas with my class. So it's like, if you do normal decision, that's great. I always tell them, you 100% can do normal decision. Just understand, I may not have a spot for you. by the time you find out in March, I'm usually done. I'm usually on next year's class by then. So, and sometimes I get an extra spot, like we were talking about earlier. I do want to be a program that, like, if you're that borderline Division 3, Division 1 guy or lady, and maybe you just didn't get the looks you needed out of high school, or maybe you started late, come here, play, and then we'll put you in the portal and see what happens. So maybe I lose someone in the portal at some point. I have 3 available for that year. It just kind of ebbs and flows like that. So
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's a helpful overview. And yeah, it's just I think for any kids listening to this that want to play any sport, golf or others, the keys from what you've outlined is get on it early, you know, talk to the coach, make it clear you are interested in the school if it is one of your top choices, so that they can get you that pre-read and make sure that you are getting in for the early application window, because that's so important for financial aid and for just getting the roster spot to begin with. So
yeah, I mean, if you do early decision, you find out your financial aid in November. Like
yeah,
that's huge, because then if it's in a comfortable place, then you're good and you can make a decision. If it's not in a comfortable place, you need a little bit more, you can start the appeal process a little bit
they'll
sooner.
appeal. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's just but these are all things, like, I can point you in the right direction. I cannot walk over to financial aid and be like, hey, this is, one of my recruits, can you give him more money? We're not, that's an NCAA violation. You're not allowed to
right.
do that.
Yeah.
So
But
it's one of the
it
downsides.
is helpful to have the coach as an advocate to say, hey, here's what you could do. Like, go talk to these people, start the appeals process. Like, having someone who is knowledgeable about what options are is invaluable,
Yeah, and
for
I
a
will
kid.
say it's year 3, so I've gotten a lot better at this. But year 1, I was like, again, thankfully I have patient bosses. I was like, what do I do? Because I was a first year head coach. It's not like there's a roadmap of how to do this, right? Like,
Right. You got to
you
learn.
try things, and you see what works and what doesn't. So, but yeah, and just it's my favorite thing to get those commitment calls. It's so much fun when somebody sees their next 4 years with you. On the other side, though, just understand, recruits, like, we don't want to say no. We would love to take everybody, but if you're 15th on the roster, at most I'm getting 10 into a tournament. I'm never getting 15 into a tournament. So it's just, make sure you go check the roster sizes and make sure that you would be happy there. And that's the big thing with, like, does the school have my program? Am I going to be happy at this place? Because if you don't play, then it's the school now. Like, it's, you have the program, but then you got to like the school. I think where you see a lot of people that make decisions purely based off of a program, and then maybe they get there and they don't play a lot, is that they didn't really actually take a deep dive into the school and the campus and the area, and they're like, oh well, now it's like, yeah, maybe this isn't the place for me. Do your research. Go find 25 schools that fit what you want to do, that have a program, have your list of questions ready, and then just bug us. Bug us continuously. Like, just, it's not going to, it does not annoy me to get multiple emails from somebody. It shows me who cares enough to put that time in when they could be hanging out with friends, on a Friday night. They're sitting at home trying to fulfill their dream of playing college sports, because there's nothing like it. I mean, you
Yep.
played, I played, like, when you put your uniform on, it just feels different. And there's not a lot of people that get to be an NCAA athlete.
It's the truth. It's the
So,
truth. Good place to stop there. We're going to ask you the last question we ask every former athlete that comes on the podcast. If you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say get in the training room earlier. When I was a freshman and I hadn't caught as many games, I was like, I was good to go the next day. By the time I was a junior or senior, I was living in an ice bath. So I would probably say go get in the training room. I would also say, winning is also is a huge part of it, but I would have probably told myself to enjoy it a little bit more. To, even when you're tired, go do stuff with your teammates outside of sports. I would have said, it's not the end of the day if you go 0 for 3. because I played baseball, like, I would have probably said to sit back and enjoy it a little bit more. I have some great memories, and I absolutely did. But for me, I think I took it super serious, all the time when the game was on. And I think it would have been a lot of fun to go back and tell my 18-year-old self, you know, when you're hanging out on the bench, in between innings, like hang out with your guys, like hang out with your teammates, and those are probably the two things. But I think that my knees probably would have liked me a little bit more now that I'm in my 30s if I had taken care of my body those first two seasons a
Yeah,
little bit better.
makes
So
sense. Well, good advice throughout. As we said at the top of the show, it's fun to get a full D3 perspective here from you, Coach Breier, to as a player, as an assistant coach, as a head coach. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights here.
that love it. Always trying to help. And it's part of the fun of the job that I have, and I think part of the role that we have as coaches is to help grow the game and help young people navigate this path. Because like I said, I didn't have a lot of my family didn't have a lot of experience in this, so anytime that I can help with that, I'm in.
All right. Well, if you want to check them out, LC Pios Golf on Instagram. You can fill out their questionnaire if you're an interested player. Make sure to include all the information we talked about in this conversation so that your email gets seen. And yeah, keep working on your game. We'll be following the Lewis and Clark men's and women's golf team this season to see how y'all do.
Hoping for a big one.
All right. This has been another episode of Student Athlete Sessions. You can always find earlier episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks again, Coach Breier.
Thank you.